and welcome to Business Line. Greece's newly elected Prime Minister and the Finance Minister have been on the European tour to meet their counterparts. Before going to Paris, Yanis Varoufakis met the Eurogroup's head in Athens. This is when he said that Greece has no intention to cooperate with the mission from a lending troika of the European Union, European Central Bank and the International Monetary Fund. Instead, the country's government has its own plan and its own idea of what can be done with Greek debt.
Greece's newly appointed finance minister is on a European tour seeking to reassure international investors that Athens is not in a standoff with its European partners. But he's being faced with varying degrees of support for any renegotiation of Greece's debt burden. While the French were sympathetic, Britain's George Osborne urged Yanis Varoufakis to act responsibly. In a Financial Times article, the Greek finance minister is quoted as saying Athens will reject any further loans under the current rescue plan, despite Greece's €172 billion bailout expiring at the end of the month. His Prime Minister, Alexis Tsipras, who's on the same diplomatic offensive, claims there are options such as creating new long-term growth-linked bonds, thereby delaying Greek repayment. Such ideas are sounding alarm bells in the Eurozone. Meanwhile, Athens appears to be relying on the European Central Bank to offer liquidity support, a reliance which might be misplaced.
It's not only his statements that are making big news. Yanis Varoufakis has become a sensation himself. His casual style has led to an explosion of media interest from day one. The 53-year-old has amassed thousands of followers on Twitter, where he calls himself an economic professor quietly writing obscure academic texts for years until thrust onto the public scene by Europe's inane handling of an inevitable crisis. When he rocked up in London to meet George Osborne, it was all about the way he looked on the social media. Varoufakis had a leather jacket over an untucked bright blue shirt, black trousers and boots. Back home in Athens, he prefers his bike and while traveling, flies economy class. Maybe next time he'll take a low-cost airline. Some of them are promising cheaper airfares because of the lower oil prices. But Ryanair warns that will have repercussions.
A 25% hike in traffic and a cut in costs by 5%. Two predictions by Ryanair for the first 3 months to March the 30th. The Irish airline also issued increased guidance for full-year net profits from between €810 million and 830 to 840 to 850 million euros. But it warned shareholders and analysts to temper expectations for full-year net profits in 2015-16. We believe any growth in profits will be modest as our fuel is hedged at $92 a barrel, the company said. That could mean rival airlines will benefit from the lower oil prices. Investors focused on the longer-term outlook and shares in Ryanair fell 5% in early trading.
Fuel hedging is a very widespread practice for airlines. It is how they reduce their exposure to volatile oil prices. This kind of contract allows a company to establish a fixed cost so that it won't be hit hard if oil prices go up. But what if they go down, like now? This is exactly what's been happening to airlines worldwide. There are no rules. Each company has its own approach. Ryanair says it hedged around 90% of its fuel needs for the year ahead, but others are not using this practice at all. As a consequence, they could benefit more from cheaper oil and, what's particularly important for us, would be able to lower their ticket prices. European airlines typically hedge up to between 60 and 85% of their fuel needs for the coming year. Their Asian rivals tend to hedge far less. Many of them have been ultra-cautious since the oil price turbulence back in 2008. And from planes to the cars, with more on the vehicles of future. This is it. This is IT.
The most common worry about ride-hailing apps is drivers, since they're not licensed professionals. Well, apparently in the future, your driver might become the car itself. Uber just announced a partnership with Carnegie Mellon University to create a research center and develop autonomy technologies, which is just a fancy way of saying driverless cars. But wait, what's the name of that company which presented the smart car at the Detroit Auto Show? Oh right, it's Google. which also happens to be one of Uber's biggest partners after it invested $258 million in August 2013. And yet, the San Francisco-based company is growing suspicious of this so-called friend, who is reportedly considering also stepping into the ride-sharing business. According to Bloomberg, Google's chief legal officer has informed Uber's board of those plans and even shown screenshots of an appropriate app. Google's tweets suggest it doesn't plan to start a war. Still, even if the destination is the same, a future of driverless taxis, the two partners don't appear willing to share the ride. That was it. That was IT.
Spain's economic recovery has accelerated more than expected in the end of 2014. Moreover, it was the first annual growth in 7 years for the economy. And we've now got the first data for 2015 from Spain's job market.
Spain still faces an uphill battle in restoring its battered labour market. The number of registered jobless rose by 1.75% in January from a month earlier. That meant nearly 78,000 more people out of work for a total of 4.53 million. Those figures are not adjusted for seasonal factors like weather. It was the first time the job centres were fuller since October. The end of the busy Christmas period meant the services sector took the biggest hit. However, builders hired more workers and the overall jobless total was down by 6% from January last year.
That's it for now. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.